Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is the news for February the 9th, 2022, the year of the Tiger, actually, I think, as of recently. How's everyone doing at home? Let me know how you're doing after last night in the comments. Obviously, poor result from Manchester United. We'll get into some news. Obviously, new manager on the horizon, new midfield on the horizon, and we've got a few quotes from Ralf Rangnick saying what the United players have to do to start winning games coming up as well. Get your thoughts in the comments, and if you aren't already, please hit the subscribe button. Let's get started. Let's get straight into this because we've got a bit of a wild goose chase of a story here. We start in one place and we end in another place, and I'm going to take you all the way through it. Manchester United's lineup under Erik Ten Hag with three signings as boss certain to leave Ajax. Now, the lineup under Ten Hag, don't care about that because, you know, it's just conjecture, it's guesswork. The boss certain to leave Ajax is the thing that we care about here. This is coming from the Express, and normally with the Express, I would go, oh, it's the Daily Express, next. I'd swipe left on it, Tinder style, right? But we're going to track this through to its original source, and that's why we are actually covering this. So, according to the Express, Manchester United have been tipped to appoint Erik Ten Hag as their new manager this summer, and then it says, United could appoint Ten Hag as their new manager after reports claim he was certain to be heading for the exit door at Ajax after the club's director of football, Mark Overmars, resigned. For anyone who doesn't know what that was about, he was texting people inappropriately at the club, which obviously, you know, you got to go. And then it says, the former Arsenal winger left the Dutch club early after admitting he was ashamed for sending inappropriate messages to female colleagues. Right, so fair enough. Reports claimed, and I'm thinking, well, if the Express hadn't even got their own source on this, how reliable can this be? So then you click on the link, reports claimed. What are these reports? Here's the report. It's from the Daily Express, that report. And it says, Man United received boost as Erik Ten Hag certain to leave Ajax over Mark Overmars scandal. And you go, well, so they've just quoted themselves and linked a report that they've written into a new article to get more clicks. Well, maybe they have, but then you read into that article, and then it says, here's the actual source on that claim, and it is Mike Verwij, who is a reporter for Telegraph Sport and the Telegraph in the Netherlands, which is quite reliable, which is much more reliable, for instance, than the Daily Express. He has been speaking on a podcast, and he has said that the Overmars and Ten Hag are one unit, and he sees them as a single unit together, and that he will leave now Overmars has left. Now, it's a slightly tricky situation to be put in, and one where you sort of think, well, what do you mean they're one unit? So he's going to quit because Overmars overstepped the, work boundaries there. He's just going to leave as well, and go work with him, and he's not going to work somewhere unless Overmars is allowed to sign. I don't quite understand that angle of it, but the point of he feels that Ten Hag will leave the club after this scandal is pretty crucial, because obviously one of the things that makes Ten Hag difficult to get, and one of the reasons we didn't sign him as a full-time manager when Solskjaer left, is because he didn't want to leave Ajax. He didn't want to leave partway through the season. He felt like he had unfinished business there. Now, if that has changed, if the feeling is at the end of the season he's available, and especially if there is uncertainty around his job anyway, because someone who he's relies on has left the club for whatever reason, then obviously that makes the job a lot easier for Manchester United in terms of the willingness to get Erik Ten Hag to be Manchester United's new manager. And for me, he would be my number one choice. He's the one that's exciting. He's the one that feels as though he's on the up. He's the up-and-coming manager rather than Pochettino, who's kind of been floating around at the top level for a decade, and not really doing much. Ten Hag is exciting, successful, continually successful, and has also, rebuilt that Ajax team, or, rebuilt sections and portions of the Ajax team while sticking to a budget much tighter than he'd have at Manchester United, although admittedly it is a budget larger than the ones he's up against in the Netherlands. To me, he should be Manchester United's number one target. And again, according to these reports, he will be available in the summer if Manchester United want him, which to me is big news, and it's good news as well, because as much as I like Ralf Rangnick, and I think he's doing a better job than people give him credit for, I think it's something like United have had 70 shots in the last 3 games and we've scored 3 goals. Which you can't blame on the manager. I think what you can blame on the manager maybe is the mentality of the players struggling once we've conceded. But the fact that we've had 70 shots in the last 3 games and only scored 3 goals, the manager is giving those players instructions that allow them to create those chances. The fact that they're not putting the ball in the back of the net, you can't blame the manager for. But as much as I like Ralf Rangnick, I think he will go upstairs after this season. I don't see him continuing unless we win the Champions League, which again seems unlikely. And Ten Hag for me is the one that excites me the most. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you want as the next manager? I think it seems to be Poch or Ten Hag seem to be the two leading candidates at the moment. Whenever we do polls, whenever we put these things out on social media, it does seem to be Ten Hag that people prefer. But the Poch name isn't going anywhere, is it? Let's have a look at some of the comments. Santa Notch says, I find it too difficult to believe Ten Hag is willing to join us, having talked about what he desires from a club he would prefer to work for. Yeah, he does seem to value things that Manchester United's ownership and hierarchy don't value, but you know, it's easier said than done, I think, to turn down a club like Manchester United, especially if we're offering tons of money and the sort of exposure and you know, positioning of basically the biggest club in the world. I know that, you know, other clubs can fight for that claim, but United certainly can fight for that as well. Let's move on then to Youri Tielemans, and this is from the Daily Star. I'm going to take these off because I can't hear anything through them anyway. This is from the Daily Star, or Leicester Mercury, quoting the Daily Star, saying that Youri Tielemans is a target for Manchester United, but we are worried that we will face a double blow in our transfer target. So United want Tielemans, but it's because we think Rice, and then after that, who's the other player that United are linked with that we are worried we won't be able to get? It says here in this article, Calvin Phillips is the other one that apparently United are worried we won't be able to get. So Tielemans is basically the third choice here. The Daily Star report that Tielemans is also wanted by Italian giant Juventus and has his eye on competing in the Champions League next season. United has said to be keen on the move for Tielemans because of the likelihood of being priced out of a move for the West Ham and England midfielder Declan Rice, and they are also having reservations about a potential signing of Calvin Phillips from Leeds, with the player himself outlining his wish to remain at Elland Road. I mean, Tielemans is one of those players that he's obviously a good player, and there's no doubt in that. And I know he scored a goal, was it the FA Cup final last year, and everyone was going crazy saying United need someone like that. I don't know how much better he is than what we've got. The one thing I will say is, if Pogba leaves, which it looks like he will do, I think we can all agree on that, we may need another number 8. And maybe in that instance, Tielemans could come in as the Pogba replacement. But we still need the McTominay replacement. We still need the Matic replacement, that deep line player. We are in a position, obviously, where we're probably going to be losing, you know, multiple midfielders. I'm sure Donny will leave. Pogba looks like he's going to leave as well. So we already need 2 midfielders. We might need 3 or 4 by the time the season rolls around, which I can't see us doing. But I think Youri Tielemans strikes me as more of a Pogba replacement than a player to take this current team from where it is now up to being the standards that it needs to be. We still need that defensive midfielder. I don't think he's that. And, you know, maybe it's not his fault that he's not that player, but I struggle to get excited to buy a player that isn't as good as Pogba and actually isn't the hole we need to fix anyway, or that we need to fill anyway. Obviously, he's a good player, but he's not what United need as far as I'm concerned. Although maybe, like I said, if Pogba leaves, he is what United need. Phuket says we need a whole new team on the horizon. That is a bit of a concern, isn't it? It felt like we were a couple of transfers away from challenging for league titles at the end of last season, and now we're going to need at least 1 new striker, maybe 2 at the end of the season. We're going to need at least 1 new midfielder, maybe 2. We're going to need at least 1 new fullback, maybe 2. You know, it's all looking a bit doom and gloom again at United, isn't it? So it's going to be tricky. But hopefully with Rangnick going upstairs, we can start moving in the right direction in terms of transfers and have a consistent vision towards a club that actually, regardless of the manager and the personnel, which seem to change every couple of years, we can be building in the right direction. Let's move on then and talk about Ralf Rangnick, of course, who has told Manchester United players what they must do in the top 4 race. Obviously, after the game last night, Rangnick has been quoted talking about how we were slightly unlucky, how it's disappointing to not be able to see a full 90 minutes from the team. Here's what he said. He said, even if we'd won against Burnley, it would have been important, but now it's even more important to get 6 points out of those next 2 games. But in order to do that, we have to learn lessons and just be aware that we have to play on that kind of level, not only for 45 or today maybe 70 minutes. We have to play like that for 90 to 94 minutes. And this is the problem with United at the moment. First half, sensational yesterday. First half against Middlesbrough, sensational. Created loads of chances. Burnley didn't have a shot in the first half yesterday. And yet somehow we turned that into one goal. We dominated, should have scored 3. We turned it into one goal. We have to be able to create more than that. And in a few words in the defence of United and the team yesterday, I think it's easier said than done to just say, well, the fact that those 2 goals were disallowed probably wrongly means, or certainly controversially, just score more. But if those goals were allowed and we're 3-0 up, you wouldn't say, why didn't we score more than 3? It's difficult to score 4 goals against Burnley. And that is essentially the task we were given after those 2 goals were ruled out. There were 2 goals that, let's be honest, if Burnley had scored them against us, for a fact the referee isn't overturning those. Because the storyline is, you go to Burnley, it's a difficult game. Just because you cost loads of money doesn't mean you get an easy ride here at Burnley. The ref wouldn't have overturned those. Like the West Brom game last season where Lindelof's getting his face grabbed and their striker's leaning around him and grabbing all over him. If that's the other way around and that's the United player, the big money, showboating United player, that goal gets ruled out. But when it's a small team who's, it's scrappy it's scrappy in Burnley, there's no way the refs overturn those goals if it's the other way around. Pogba putting his arm on someone's shoulders a tiny bit. If that's Weghorst on, Maguire or Lindelof, let's say Lindelof was playing, who's known for being a bit weak. If there's a big striker putting his arms on Lindelof's shoulders, there's no way that goal gets ruled out. And that happens a lot, I think, with big teams, and especially United, when we're seen as being expensive but soft. Like the Sheffield United goal last season, all over David De Gea. If that's the other way around, and that's Maguire or Rashford or Ronaldo all over their goalkeeper, for a fact that gets overturned. And that's not trying to be United victim mentality. It happens with a lot of big teams. When you go to those sort of hard hitting, strong, tall, big, cold night in Burnley teams or cold night in Stoke teams, they get away with that a little bit more because that's how they play. What did you expect? You came to Turf Moor, you're not going to get an easy ride. So I think it is pretty critical to say, just because you had 2 goals disallowed, you should have just scored loads more. Because essentially what you're asking the team to do is score 4 or 5 goals away at Burnley, which isn't easy. It's just a tricky position to be in, and I think Rangnick's right. These momentary lapses in concentration from Maguire yesterday, and we saw it from Varane and, obviously the referee against Middlesbrough, they are costing United games, and I think we are slightly unlucky as well. As much as I want to be negative and criticise this team, I think we are unlucky not to have scored more goals and not to have won both of those games. Even with those decisions as they were, I think United still did enough to win them both. Slightly unfortunate that United strikers couldn't finish their dinner in the last couple of games. But that's going to be all from me. We'll be back later on today with Stephen Howson, who's going to be bringing you his thoughts on the game yesterday and whether Maguire should keep the captaincy at Manchester United. Big video coming out this afternoon. Make sure you check that one out. Thank you for joining us. If you aren't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell as well. So when we go live for the news, when we release a new video, you find out first. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a bit.